Hey guys, and welcome to Taylor Tech. Today we are going to be looking at how to set up what I consider the ultimate streaming setup from an audio standpoint. Now, this is a video I have tried to shoot like 3 times now, and every time I am not quite happy with how it came out, and I'm probably not going to be happy with this one, but oh well, we're going to do our best. All right, so the core concept that we're going to be exploring here is removing discrete audio control from applications within the PC and being able to do it manually using something like a mixer so that you can quickly adjust audio levels with the mixer without having to leave your stream or leave your game. I find that it is distracting sometimes when a streamer is all of a sudden trying to debug a technical issue with the audio, because for the majority of the audience it sounds like the game is explosively loud and the streamer is quiet, or vice versa, or something else is going on. So that's what we're going to be doing today. The main concept here is that we are going to have to break down, what audio signals do we have involved in our stream, our voice, the game sounds, the sounds of other people on voice chat or something like that. Maybe you have some special stream audio that you play, like when someone gives you a donation or something like that. We want to be able to control all that stuff independently and selectively mute or increase or decrease the volume of it. So, isolating all of our sounds so that we can output them from the PC individually, and then combine them into a single mix, which is what a mixer does, and then send that single mix back into the PC as a sound source for the stream. We also want to be able to potentially send a different sound source back to the PC independently, like our voice separate from the game stream, in case we have a sideline conversation that we have to have, to get like a server password for a competitive match or something of that nature. The first thing you're going to need to do is understand all of the inputs and the outputs that you're going to need from your PC, because your PC may not support enough input and output for what you want to do. So what we'll do is we'll look at everything that we're going to be doing to send sound back to the PC. In most cases, all you're really going to have is the stream's audio, so the final stream audio, and a separate voice that is going to be your voice for voice communication in game, because you may need a separate level for yourself in voice communication in game or for the stream. It may not be the same. Secondly, we're going to look at all of the audio outputs that we're going to want to include in the stream. So examples of different audio outputs would be game audio or voice chat audio, audio related to like overlays and OBS that you might want to separate out, and just, basic pop-ups and notifications and things like that that you want to not have in your stream, but and make sure you understand where those are going, because you may still want to be able to hear those while you are streaming. So what you want to do is you want to just make yourself a list, write all those things down that you're going to want. So once you have a list of all of those, there may be some that you can combine. This is going to, again, be individual and depend on exactly how you're setting things up, but an example would be any stream pop-up or any stream notification sounds, like for donations and whatnot, can probably be mixed in with game audio and be a single output from the PC. You probably don't have to adjust those levels independently, although you probably do want to keep voice chat levels separately so that you can adjust those on the fly. So once you've figured out exactly how many outputs you're going to have from your PC and how many inputs you're going to have into your back into the PC, you want to make sure that, one, you have enough I/O on your PC, and two, that you have a mixer that can support that much I/O. So in terms of having enough outputs from your PC, most motherboards these days will have at least two. They'll have an optical output and they'll have a line out. Some motherboards will also allow the front headphone jack to be a separate sound source, so you'll actually have 3 different outputs. I don't see most people using more than 3 outputs, especially 3 stereo outputs. Although, again, everybody's needs are slightly different. If you're doing a podcast with 3 remote callers, that's going to take at least 4 outputs, because you're going to want a separate output for each caller, and then a 4th one if you're going to have any additional sounds beyond just the callers. So if you find that you don't have enough I/O on your mixer, you can always get a USB audio interface or a FireWire audio interface. These are easily found on Amazon. The prices range all over the place from $50 for a relatively cheap one up to several $100s for larger and more expensive ones that have a lot of channel options. I would say make sure that you give yourself at least 1 spare stereo channel over what you think you're going to use today, because you'll always find that one weird edge case where it's like, oh man, this one time I was going to do this cool stream, but I ran out of channels. So always try and size yourself at least 1 big if you have to end up adding audio with an interface. When it comes to your mixer, the same rule of thumb applies. Make sure that you give yourself at least 1 or 2 spare channels. I actually have several spare channels, but that's just because of the fact that I got a bigger mixer than I thought I'd ever use. And that actually has turned out pretty well because I am actually using a fair amount of the I/O when I'm streaming. One thing to keep in mind when you're sizing a mixer is the number of inputs that you want back to the PC. Now, every mixer is going to have a main mix that you can send back that is a single stereo channel, but you may have additional channels you want to send back. For instance, the common one is your voice going back independent of the mix's voice. You also, if you're, say you're podcasting and you have remote callers, you're going to want to send your voice to them independently of the mix's voice, or their voice to each other independently of the mix's voice. For this, you'll need an aux bus per channel that you want to send back over one, or a submix for each channel you want to send over one. So in this case, I've got 2 aux buses and 2 submixes here in addition to the main channel. So I could, in theory, have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different inputs going back to the PC. Now, 4 of those are going to be mono and 1's going to be stereo. But for the purposes of a voice call, you don't really need a stereo output, or for voice over IP or something like that, or for Skype. It's not necessary. Finally, make sure you have enough cables to hook all of this up. You're going to be using a lot of cables that you're not going to find on a shelf in Best Buy most of the time. Pretty much anything you need can be found from Amazon. Something to pay attention to, we just mentioned that not all the outputs are going to be stereo, but a lot of your PC's inputs are stereo by default. So keep that in mind and make sure that if you are sending an input back to the PC, that if it is a stereo input and you're using a mono output on the board, you want to use an interconnect cable. So when it comes to physically setting things up, every situation is going to be slightly different. You want to make sure that you get everything hooked up so that your interface is plugged in. If you ended up needing an extra interface, all of your cables are connected and laid out in the manner that makes the most sense to you. I put my main mic on channel 1. That's my most important thing. I've got my voice over IP on 3 and 4 here. It's because the PC's output for that is a little noisy, so I'm running it through the compressor to clean up some of that digital noise. And then finally, I've got my stereo mix for the game coming in on 1112. So I've got them physically spaced out a little bit so I don't actually accidentally grab the wrong fader. If you have a smaller board, you may not have the room to space it out. But as much as possible, I don't like crowding everything to one edge of the board just because it can make it a little harder to, in the moment, grab and make that quick change. So one thing that I would do as you're hooking things up, try and, as much as possible, go one at a time, channel by channel, do your physical hookup, test it, make sure it's working, and then in Windows, actually rename the playback device to be the actual channel that it is going to on the mixer. This seems a little silly at first, but it's actually extremely helpful, especially when you're in other applications that will not give you the full name of the audio device. It'll just give you the Windows name that it was assigned. I find it easier than having to remember this is the 3rd one in the list or this is the 8th one in the list. So as much as possible, name it for the channel that it's going to on the mixer. That'll make it a lot simpler for you in the future. After you get everything plugged in and you're starting to route it, try and keep 2 things in mind. What does the stream want to hear? And what does you as the streamer want to hear? Because that might not always be the same thing. We've talked about a voice over IP program. A lot of people will chat with teammates during play, but those teammates either may not be comfortable being on a stream, or you may not want your teammates on the stream so that information isn't given away if you're trying to play competitively while you stream. I don't know how many people do that. So just bear that in mind. Make sure that you understand what audio you are sending to the mainstream. And if you want audio that's not going to the mainstream, but you're still hearing it, try and use a submix or something like that, or an alt mix to isolate that audio so that only you are hearing it and it's not being heard by the general stream. I personally, when I stream, I use OBS, which has both a microphone input and a application input that basically uses a playback device as the audio source. What I do when I'm streaming is I turn off the playback device or the game input or application input. I mute that, and I only have a microphone input, which is the output of the main mix of my mixer. This mixer is a USB mixer, so it's got a recording device in Windows that is the main output of the mixer. And so that is my microphone for the game, microphone. I turn push to talk off, and then boom, all of my audio is coming out of my PC, it's coming into the mixer, and going back to OBS. I have instant control to audio levels and to muting and things like that. So that way I can make sure I provide the best possible performance on my stream for my audience and make sure that they hear everything that I expect them to hear. And that if there is a problem, if someone says I can't hear something, that kind of thing, I can quickly make a change without having to tab around or stop the game or anything like that. Wow, so that was a lot of talking. I hope that the core concept that I've been trying to get across here makes sense to you. That what we're doing very simply, we are isolating all of the different audios that we're going to be using in our stream. We're sending them out independently from the PC, bringing them into the mixer, setting our audio levels, and then sending one audio back into the PC to be streamed out. Not been streaming for that long, and I usually don't have much of an audience when I'm streaming, but I've never had a complaint about audio. Everyone can always hear what they need to hear when they need to hear it. All right, guys, well, I hope you found this video helpful and that it helps you as you go forward with your streaming content. If it was helpful for you, throw a thumbs up on it. Also, leave any comments that you have for me below. If there's any area that you felt like I didn't address, you've got additional questions, I'd love to answer them for you. If this is your first time to the channel, click subscribe so that you can see more content like this in the future. And if you think it would be helpful to other people that you know, then share it out with them. All of the core principles that we talked about here apply not just to streaming, but also to podcasting. I tried to touch on it a little bit as I went, but really streaming is kind of where my focus is. So that's mostly what I talked about. There are links in the description below to other places that you can find me online, like Twitter and Reddit and noquarter.org, which is my gaming organization. You're welcome to come and play with me. I'd love to have you along. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Have a great one. See you next time.